Hey everybody, welcome to Tuesday, and I'm going to be talking about Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, today. There will not be major spoilers for Doctor Strange 2 in this. I really enjoyed Doctor Strange 2. It is predominantly visual spectacle, but it's good visual spectacle. See it in 3D, it's worth the extra money. But one of the things I liked about it is that it finally felt like a proper Scarlet Witch outing. And I want to talk about the history of the character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe today, because the more I thought about it, the more I thought, wow, Wanda's evolution, de-evolution, evolution is a metaphor for modern feminism in a way that I'm sure is completely accidental, but sometimes this stuff happens, right? Sometimes this stuff is just happy accidents. So I'm not saying anything I'm about to talk about is in any way deliberate. It's just kind of cool and something that we can look at with the way media sort of reflects our world, and sometimes it does it best without intending to. So if you like this sort of content, help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for somebody who can use it and can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K. Okay, so I want to start at the beginning and the sort of bumpy start that Elizabeth Olsen's Wanda Maximoff had in the MCU. She first appeared as an end credits thing in Captain America and Winter Soldier. Captain America the Winter Soldier. Of course, she then got passed over to Joss Whedon for, I believe it was Age of Ultron. Joss Whedon wanted a different actress for the part, but Elizabeth Olsen was already cast. Thank God. Of course, when Joss Whedon doesn't get his way, he takes it out on everybody around him. And so there was sort of a passive-aggressive treatment with Wanda and Vision. Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany have really tried to make these characters work from the beginning. And they've always been hamstrung by either direction or writing or format. And of course, the thing that Joss Whedon was interested in with Wanda Maximoff is a woman with mind control powers. If we know anything about Joss Whedon, is that he actually does believe, if you know, you've read his stuff, that attractive women have mind control powers over men, and men are powerless to resist the mind control powers of attractive women. It's not his fault, it's their fault. These women who were much younger than him and, you know, vulnerable actresses, oh, they had all the power, he had none. And so we immediately have this kind of corruption in the depiction of Wanda Maximoff / Scarlet Witch. And this goes back to the corruption in modern feminist movements that can be traced back to the mid-90s and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, giving an entire generation of women this super warped idea of feminine strength. Whedon has this thing about, you know, not traditionally physically sexy women, and yet still there's this lure, there's this power that women have to be overpowered in a situation as opposed to just equal to the men in a given story. But there's always this dark side to the abilities. You know, I keep going back to Angel being happy made him evil after he had sex with Buffy, and that's feminist? Really? I always had an issue, a real concern, but also an anger with the fact that there was this weird gravity well around Buffy in feminist circles that because it was, I disagree that it was the best we had at the time. I would cite shows like Babylon 5 as actually being much better on feminist grounds. But Buffy became this thing that was feminist, and how dare you criticize it on feminist grounds? Well, of course it's feminist because there's women being violent and there's no boobs, so we don't have to feel bad. Of course, then you find out that, you know, actresses were starving themselves to be as skinny as Sarah Michelle Gellar, and all the toxic behavior going on behind the set. But, you know, that is different from the work product on the screen, well, other than the super skinny women thing. But even the work product on the screen was really warped. And when an entire generation of activists, I don't want to say an entire generation of women, because there were people like me. I mean, I was a bit older when Buffy came out, the series, so it wasn't quite the ironically mind control that it was for women even 5 years younger than me. I was a bit more like, no, there are issues with this ish. But it pulled everything into a not great place. And then it was a combination of, strong women that have, you know, the physical proportions of 13-year-old girls, good. No, it's not. But that became the paradigm, that overt, sexy, bad, misery and violence feminist. And I was always like, what? I mean, I came from, like I said, what a difference 5 years makes. I mean, my teen feminist years were Lara Croft and Mortal Kombat in terms of depictions of women. And, you know, equally violent, yes, but the women were allowed to have, you know, traditionally female secondary sex characteristics. You didn't have to look like you couldn't lift a steak in order to be considered feminist while you were jamming it into some guy's chest, right? That was always the issue I had with the whole Buffy thing. And this was because, I mean, I was super muscular when I was a teenager, and, you know, boy, did I not want to be at that time, because clothes didn't fit, and I was considered fat because I didn't look like Sarah Michelle Gellar. And I knew that if you do the training to do that kind of thing, you put on muscle. You do not look the way the women in those shows did. And people explain, oh, it's because she's a slayer and this, that. But every single fucking girl on that show had the same profile. Like, come on. Whedon had a type. He was clearly threatened by truly powerful women because he thought women have mind control that make him powerless to refuse. You know, as opposed to what came later. But we've established now the real problem with Whedon, both with feminist media criticism as a whole, but also with Wanda, right? And I'm going to cite now one of the most interesting quotes for me that came out of reviews with WandaVision. Now, everybody knows WandaVision frustrated the hell out of me, right? And now I have lost the quote. This is the quote I really liked in a review about WandaVision. The show does champion entertainment as a safe and welcoming space for those looking for an escape, but it also acts as a cautionary tale for those who employ it as an unhealthy coping mechanism. And that is Gail Sequeira at Film Companion, who said that Sequeira, mispronouncing her name. But I do think that in a nutshell summarizes the unhealthy and arrested development relationship that feminist criticism has with media. I've always felt, and you guys know this if you watch my content for any length of time, it is this weird mix of intense emotional attachment to things like Buffy, things like WandaVision. I tweeted a while back that, WandaVision stans are a unique type of intense. But it's that they need the escape so much. They need the representation so much that it becomes an unhealthy coping mechanism. And that is part of the reason I think that Buffy became this gravity well in feminist media criticism and other equally deserving, if not more so, shows. Like, for instance, Charmed didn't get the same gravity well around it. Buffy was just ironically mind control for the people that stand it. And that's why Whedon coming back in and doing Age of Ultron and being fundamental, like foundational to where Wanda Maximoff started is relevant. Because we got all those same problems. We couldn't get Wanda without, Joss Whedon's inability to create a truly powerful, sexy, sexually empowered woman. He even asked up Black Widow in that regard. Black Widow's sexuality got her abused and mocked and demeaned, and the whole thing was about how much she could take. I mean, visually, that whole chase with the Hulk was exciting, but the idea that there could be anything between those two when she's seen that intense potential for violence and like comic book's worst anger management problem right there, I just did not buy. But that's what happens when you get a bunch of male narcissists putting words and actions in female characters' mouths and then other characters. I will spare you the other issues I had with that movie. And a lot of people gave me a lot of shit at the time. In retrospect, I think people are more kind to my point of view on that. And this is not just Whedon. Marvel let Whedon do it. And so it's not just him. However, it is so classically him. And then there was a bit of, the Russos got a hold of Wanda with Civil War, but there were a lot of characters in that, and it wasn't really the point. It sort of advanced the plot along. And then it was Endgame, and again, everybody only got a few moments. Not Endgame, Infinity War. Only got a few moments. But then we get to WandaVision, and we actually get some focus on... It should have been Wanda and Vision. It was Wanda with a side of Vision, which I actually think was not the best way to go, but I will play the ball where it lies. WandaVision really got lost in the sitcom tropes. Now, the ending was, to a point, affected by COVID, but I did a lot of research into this before I did the video. I don't see any firm evidence that the ending was substantially changed. They did lighten it up. Apparently the citizens of Westview, I don't remember, but it was sort of like a Marvel Zombies thing that was really supposed to. They lightened the ending up, and they did get somewhat impacted by COVID, and apparently during the COVID shutdown, they mucked with the ending more than they would otherwise have mucked with it, but they were rewriting as they went. And I am so not a fan of rewriting major components, pulling a show apart and putting it back together while you're going. You got to get the script mostly like 80% where you want it and then just refine. Because if you're pulling apart and putting it back together and pulling it apart and putting it back together as you go, you may break it and not be able to put it back together before the end. And that is partially what I think happened with the WandaVision ending. But in part, it was just too pat. And Wanda has been pulled from the toxic Whedon influences on feminism to the post-Me Too, nothing is a woman's fault because victimhood, toxic elements of modern feminism. This is what I mean about it being so fascinating. You know, we swing from guys like Whedon controlling depictions of women in the media, and now we have this reaction to guys like Whedon by shows with you know, female, I don't know if she was a showrunner, she was a head writer on it, but people became so afraid of really digging deep regarding the bad crap a woman can do when anybody can do bad shit when they get a lot of power, including women. And the thing I think WandaVision really passed the buck on was Wanda Maximoff's accountability for the things she did. She tortured an entire town of people. And Agatha was ultimately right. Wanda didn't deserve the power she had. She couldn't handle it. And so one could argue that, you know, Agatha was in the right trying to take power from Wanda, because look at what Wanda was doing with it. You know, now apparently in the original version, they were going to find out that Agatha had the Darkhold and all that stuff. The book that you see at the end of WandaVision. But WandaVision, again, like Buffy, people just love the shit out of that show. And I was sitting back going, I thought the performances were really good, but I don't get the love for the writing. I found all the red herrings in, I think that's cheap, putting red herrings as Easter eggs in things that you know people are going to use as Easter eggs. It's unsatisfying. It's fucking with the audience. I don't like it when Stephen Moffat does it. I don't like it when anybody does it. I say Stephen Moffat because that was a complaint I had about, you know, legitimate queer baiting in shows like Sherlock and you know, some of the stuff he did in Doctor Who. And it's not just him, it's Mark Gatiss as well. But I don't like that element. I think that because when you're giving, media is not like life. Life does have a lot of things that just don't mean anything. But when you are building what's called a mystery box, like WandaVision was, it's a locked room mystery. Little tiny details are supposed to be relevant, and some of them very much were. But a lot of that early information was incredibly superfluous. And, you know, at the end of the day, WandaVision was just House of M with a gimmick at the end of the day, essentially, with a little bit of, you know, okay, yes, things were drawn from the 67 era, like Silver Age, Wanda and Vision stuff, but it was essentially House of M. And the way they built up to it originally, hoping for more, didn't get it, disappointing just because of those first 3 or 4 episodes just so built expectations. It is what it is. WandaVision was a messy show, but at least they started to build Wanda as a character, only to completely shit the bed at the end. Just completely. Just having Wanda say, I don't need you to tell me who I am, after Agatha literally had to drag her by the hair through an entire episode telling her who she was was unsatisfying and cheap and frustrating. And apparently Elizabeth Olsen knew nothing about the script for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness while she was shooting WandaVision, so it's not her fault. She put herself in the hands of a team that just... This poor woman has been pulled in a different direction for every damn take on this character. And she's clearly very trusting as an actress, and that can be a really good quality. Except in the people you're trusting don't know what you're doing. And so I feel sympathy for her because damn, enter Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi is the first person who's been at the helm of something involving Wanda Maximoff who, one, understands who the Scarlet Witch is. Two, likes who the Scarlet Witch is in comic book continuity. Three, knows how to tell a compelling story with that character. And Wanda steals the freaking show in Multiverse of Madness. Elizabeth Olsen is at her absolute best. You know, if you liked her in WandaVision, you're gonna, well, you'll either hate what they do in this or love what they do in this. But her performance is so good. It's not overdone, but she connected. And because the story knows who Wanda is, the director knows who Wanda is, and the actress finally knows where the character is going. And finally, we get to see the character instead of the reflections of culture that a female superhero character needs to check every box for while being otherwise boring so she offends no one. They take risks with her. Wanda Maximoff is in Multiverse of Madness, and these are not spoilers. This is stuff I think people should have known going in. But instead of this, oh, I'm a victim and I know who I am and I was just really sad. Yeah, okay. Saying Wanda is mentally ill doesn't do her justice. Wanda Maximoff is bitter. She's bitter and she's twisted. And she's someone who will take anything that she can from anyone that she can because she can. And it's a absolute power corrupts absolutely story, which is what WandaVision should have been, but wasn't, because you can't do that with a sitcom format. And they gave her too much pathos. It's, oh, the poor, she's traumatized and she just wants to be a mom. Well, there's ways of doing that. Fucking adopt, man. Like, what the hell? What was that? And I won't get into details, but the way Sam Raimi's vision went for it, regarding the bitterness and the just need for power to get what she wants. Not only was it finally a Scarlet Witch that can stick, but she's a really good foil for Doctor Strange's character flaws, because, and this gets a bit muddled in the movie, but he is arrogant. He does grab power. He also manipulates people to get what he wants. I mean, that's one of the darker parts of Infinity War / Endgame, is he kind of orchestrated the blip because it was the only way. Like, he sent Iron Man to his death by persuasion. Doctor Strange is a manipulator. Doctor Strange mucks with stuff he shouldn't. He's reckless, and he always just ekes out 51% good. He's an example. I'm not even sure. I'm torn between him being a chaotic good character and something in the neutral zone. But that's interesting. I mean, that is drawn from the comics. Full disclosure, I'm a huge Ditko Doctor Strange fan. I'm obsessed with Steve Ditko's art on on Doctor Strange. It's some of the most innovative. I maintain that the only real innovation in comic book layouts since then was J.H. Williams 3's work on Batwoman. That's how obsessed I am. And they finally got it. And part of that was because Doctor Strange in the comics tends to be surrounded by strong women, and they've really gone into that original love story, which they're now, well, taking a different tact on as well. But what I took, backfilling from the amazingness that Sam Raimi and Elizabeth Olsen and the whole team on Multiverse of Madness did, is I started thinking, Wanda Maximoff has no empathy in this movie. She doesn't. And I started going, is it possible she never did? That she was using sitcoms to simulate caring for others. And that's an interesting kind of cool thing. It sort of backfills the shitty presentation of her and Vision's relationship, because the central question of how does a woman fall in love with a synthoid like that? And a possible answer is she never actually did. She was always just going through the motions because that's what she thought would make her happy. But she wasn't really capable of it. She couldn't love because she needed so much control. And you can understand why. She was really messed up, right? And that's a fully formed character. That's a well-written character. And that is not the interpretation of the character back that. But that's what I'm saying. What they did was so good because they created a depiction of the character that explains all the weaknesses and the inconsistencies. She's basically a sociopath. And that, that doesn't mean she's not capable of caring for people as possessions. Everything about the world is just an extension of her. And that's how she sees the world. And that has always been how she sees the world. And it's one reason or another. But, like Doctor Strange, Wanda has choices. Wanda finally has choices. Instead of it always just being, victimhood drove her to this inevitable conclusion. No, she had choices. She made bad choices. And that, to me, is so much more empowering for women than anything that Joss Whedon did or the reaction to Joss Whedon did. We are finally entering a period of storytelling where women are allowed to be evil but accessible. 2, women don't have to be avatars of the zeitgeist. They can just be characters. And I'm sure some people are going to be terribly disappointed that Wanda is the villain of Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. That was what I was hoping for going in. A lot of the marketing was an absolutely massive fake out, and I don't know why. But I liked her more when the media stopped forcing me to like her. I could see her bad decisions and relate to her rage. And everybody understands the urges, the temptations that she has. But then you see how other characters in the same story deal with the exact same temptations in different ways, and it works really well. And the horror elements really hammer home that morality play element in a way that I thought Doctor Strange's emotional arc was kind of weak, just because, I mean, Elizabeth Olsen just blows Benedict Cumberbatch off the screen. And she's the best part of the movie. She's the absolute best part of the movie. And America Chavez is quite good, so that's saying a lot. It's not that Doctor Strange is bad, just Elizabeth Olsen just so dominates in this film with just her presence and her she's all in, you know. She really sells it. And I think that's because finally the entire team actually knew who her character was. And a well-written, well-rounded character is so much more empowering for everybody who watches a piece of media than something that's being forced in people's faces, a strong female character. Now, you can never say that, you know, Scarlet Witch was terribly woke, but they really did fall off the deep end with that WandaVision finale and force feeding the audience a moral that just, it didn't work. It didn't track. It was a letdown. The ending was disappointing. And I think that was part of the reason that the actors didn't get the critical acclaim in terms of award season that they probably deserve solely on acting. Just because people were in general kind of exhausted and let down by the show as a whole. It happens. It's not fair, but it happens. But they finally got it right, and people don't tend to get nominated for awards based on action movies that come out in May. But she'll probably get other parts. She'd be a great Mera replacement if DC wanted to replace Mera in the Aquaman movie, just saying. But yeah, it gives me a bit of hope. And yes, it's a male director again, but it just shows that male directors can get female characters and can create something meaningful and complete. And commitment to craft and commitment to story will overcome ideology and identity politics any day of the week. And that's what we need to do as artists and creators, is just be true to the story and be true to the character. And that, like I said, is ultimately more empowering than any political position ever can be. You know what's coming. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. And you can buy a one-time Leanna Care session for somebody who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.